Hello and welcome to Deep Thought Shallow Plots.
My name is Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name is Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things.
Katy, what are we going to overanalyze today?
Krampus. I can't roll my R.
No, you cannot. Krampus.
Gruß, Krampus.
I thought we weren't going to sing.
You said you weren't going to sing. I made no such promise.
All right. It is Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we got a carol.
Yeah, right.
So this movie, 2015 PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
Not our first one, but like
Not
our
a
second
lot of
one
PG-13
or something.
movies, yeah.
And I think this one would have benefited from not being PG-13, but maybe that's
I almost always feel that way.
Yeah.
That I would rather see an R-rated movie than a PG-13, especially a horror movie. I'd rather see it rated R. But I also see the need to like make it more appealing to more audience members and to make more money off of it. Like I get it.
I mean, it's kind of like a pretty straightforward morality tale kind of feel to it. It's like very like hallmarks of like traditional Germanic fairy tale stuff.
Yeah.
So like it kind of makes sense to
winter.
make it more like kid oriented.
Yeah.
Or not exactly kid oriented, but
yeah, something that a 13-year-old could go see in the theaters.
yeah, and
rather
be like,
than a 17-year-old.
What a lesson I have learned. The horrors of Krampus.
Probably not. Yeah. Yeah, I think like the main thing to me is that this movie is like this balance of like, especially for a child experiencing Christmas. Like I remember my early Christmas memories, even though I am now Jewish, they're fantastic. Like I like that warmth and that like excitement and like, you know.
That's nice. Mine are very neutral.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. And you know what? I think probably a lot of people's are.
Yeah.
And like that experience of like get super excited about Christmas, I was like quite young. Yeah, I kind of knocked it off into the adolescence. But as a young child, you know, you do kind of, at least I do, you know, feeling that, I think what people call Christmas magic, you know.
Yeah.
So I think this movie is kind of that balance or looking at the relationship between like that magic, especially younger kids feel around Christmas time, and just like the reality of like the cutthroat consumerism,
Right, yeah.
that it takes for families, especially moms like Toni Collette's character,
Yeah, right.
to like make that Christmas magic
Like
a
to
possibility.
make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason it starts on like this movie. I mean, starts on like a Black Friday sort of
kind of thing happening. Yeah, people are fighting in
over at the
department
mall.
stores.
Yeah, I mean, it's because they're doing some sort of like, whatchamacallit, the birth of Jesus,
Nativity
some sort of nativity play thing
that ends
the
in
son
violence,
yeah.
which is so blasphemous. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we should say real quick. This movie is about.
I mean, it's about Krampus.
It's about Krampus. It's about a boy whose family is fighting a little bit. Honestly, not even that bad.
It's not that bad.
He gets upset, so he tears up his letter to Santa and loses his Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
So then Krampus comes to punish the family for losing the meaning of Christmas. But then the boy decides to sacrifice himself to get them all back, and then we'll talk about the ending.
Or tries to.
Yeah, it's unclear. The ending is probably the most interesting part of this movie.
Absolutely.
Because overall, my feelings towards this movie are like,
Okay.
it was good.
Yeah.
It was okay. I always like to see Toni Collette.
We love Toni Collette.
Adam
yeah.
Scott,
I'm
sure, yeah.
a fan of Adam Scott.
You know?
Absolutely. Using David Koechner as Howard
Oh, yeah.
is fun stuff.
Yeah, no, it was good casting.
Yeah.
It was well done. I liked all of the,
The kid who played Max did a great job.
Yeah.
MJ Anthony.
I liked all the little creatures.
Absolutely.
Like the designs were nice and not like over CGI'd or anything, you know,
Yeah.
which is nice. But yeah, I think the ending was the most interesting part because it's that classic like twist ending thing. The really annoying one that you're not supposed to do, which is like, it was all a dream.
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
very
yeah.
like, isn't that what they do in whatever Christmas? I don't know my Christmas movies. The one where he imagines the world without him.
Oh,
and
yeah. A Christmas
then, right?
story.
Doesn't that one turn out to be all a dream?
The one where he gets visited by the ghosts?
No, not. Oh, that one might also be all a dream. No, the one where he doesn't exist for a while, and it's like Jimmy Stewart is the main
It's
guy.
a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Because he's suicidal.
Yeah. Doesn't that one turn out to be a dream?
Yeah, I've actually never seen it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I'm also not clear on if that's... No.
This is actually a really good point because we do get some like really clear allusions to It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And is it a Christmas Carol or a Christmas Story?
A Christmas Carol.
A Christmas
the
Carol.
Dickens one?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, with the ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do see some like pretty clear allusions to those things. Like we see them playing on the TVs around the house, or, you know, like some references being made to them like throughout this movie. And I think it does kind of follow in those footsteps, especially in the ending.
Yeah, and those ideas of Christmas being a time for ghost stories. Yes, as we talk about in our Black Christmas episode, don't miss it.
Go back. It's that time of year. Time to give it a re-listen for sure. So the way that this movie ends, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, right?
As always is the case with our podcast.
I mean, yeah,
we don't give a fuck.
Nope. Watch the movie or don't. I don't care. You know, but like, just gonna talk about it.
You made me choke on my tea.
I know we are enjoying wintry beverages. As I have hot chocolate and you have tea. I love this.
Yeah, my peppermint tea even.
Sorry. In the climax of the film, Max is left pretty much all alone. All of his family has got. Yeah. Except for one cousin. Is it Stevie or is it Jordan? I can't remember.
Stevie.
Great.
I don't know.
And Krampus and his, what do we call them? Minions? Helpers?
Yeah, his companions.
Elves, companions? Whatever word you want to use.
Yeah.
They are, I don't know. What exactly are they doing?
They're opening up a pit of hell.
A pit to the underworld.
Hell, yeah.
Yeah.
To throw Stevie into.
Yeah, which you can probably guess is where everybody else ended up.
Yeah, and also just sort of generally it looks like they're having just a little bit of a dark winter kind of pagan feeling kind of ritual, you know, like around a bonfire, even though
like
there's
a witch's Sabbath type situation.
There's like kind of a circular, you know.
It gives that vibe for sure.
Dark ritual.
And, you know, Max like musters up all his courage and is like, hey, stop it.
Yeah, which I do appreciate that we have that bookend of like the movie starting with him like ready to throw down with this other kid because the kid was like, Christmas Santa isn't real. Blah. And then like at the end, it's like, yeah, I'll fucking throw down with Krampus. Yeah, I'm not afraid of anything. I beat up the bully, okay? I'll beat up you, Krampus.
Yeah. And, you know, he tries to make that deal, you know, the like, just bring him back, take me instead,
which
put everything back to normal.
Because his Omi, his German grandmother, Austrian German grandmother, has been telling him the whole time that the true meaning of Christmas is sacrifice and giving. Mm-hmm, yeah. So it makes sense that he would think, oh, here's our solution. I will give of myself. I will sacrifice for the sake of my family.
Because it is a time for giving. Right? So then he wakes up in bed and it's Christmas morning. Yeah. And he comes downstairs. Everybody's already awake, which like, this is probably something that hasn't happened to you, but this has happened to me many times in my life where like I am the last one to wake up, like at a family gathering or function that is like,
and they're all like, where have you been?
Yeah, like, oh, look who's up. I'm like, shut up, you know. I like to sleep in.
If you wanted me, you could have come and got me.
Yeah, you could have woken me up. Anyway,
and it's the fucking holiday.
So they start. I'm on vacation.
You don't have a job. I'm a child.
So, and then it seems like everything's fine and back to normal. The house is gorgeous and overly decorated. Yeah. And there's the living room with a massive tree and presents and a fire.
Everybody seems to be like generally getting along, which they were not before. Yeah. So it's like kind of sweet. Yeah. The baby isn't crying.
Yeah. Aunt Dorothy isn't complaining about some nonsense. Yeah.
And then he gets a present that everybody's like, I don't get that for him. I don't know where that came from. Santa, maybe. I don't know. And then he opens it, and it's like the bell that his Omi got from Krampus once. Yeah. And that Krampus tried to give him.
To me, it looks like it's meant to be an ornament.
Oh, okay.
Like a tree ornament. Yeah. But yeah, it's like a bell.
It's like a little silver bell, sort of tarnished looking kind of.
And it says Krampus on it.
Yeah. Gruß vom Krampus.
It doesn't say that. It just says.
Oh, really? I thought
Krampus.
It did.
I think it just says Krampus.
And so he seems to realize that his weird dream was reality.
Maybe reality. And you do see the rest of the family also kind of start to have
like they're starting to remember, or they're like
confused.
Yeah, like maybe they thought it was all a dream too, and now they're also having the same experience he is. Yeah. Of like, though it is kind of weird that his sister Beth, who dies first before Krampus is really around and like doesn't see the bell or anything, even she seems to be remembering, and it's like, I don't know what you remember. Yeah. Or what lesson you took away from all this.
And then they kind of like brush it off.
Yeah, they're
right?
like, whatever, Christmas.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. And
Spirit
then
of Christmas,
we
yay.
pan out,
Yeah.
right? And then we find ourselves like basically being inside of a snow globe, panning out.
Yeah.
And we are looking at just one of what appear to be many, many, many snow globes.
Yes.
Of just seem like residential homes, you know?
Yeah.
Some
apparently
quite nice, but
Apparently,
homes.
just me reading, I always read background lore
Of
and
course.
trivia. Apparently, a lot of the houses that we see in the neighborhood and in like the snow globes are like famous houses from like different horror. Like there's the Amityville house.
Oh,
and, like,
okay. I didn't catch that.
The Psycho house. Yeah, I don't know.
That's cool.
And like the writer director's house is also one
Cute.
of the ones. So
Oh,
there's
I
like a
love
bunch
that.
of little, just like there are the reference to the other
Easter
Christmas
eggs.
movies. There's little references to other horror movies, which
I
is
love
pretty
it.
cute.
I didn't catch that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I could have. I don't
And
know what
so
those houses look like.
the idea is, I feel like I would be able to tell the Amityville house, and I also think that maybe I could tell the Psycho house too. I don't know. Anyway, and so like we kind of get a shot of like Krampus's claw,
Yeah,
holding on to it, and then like we kind of pan out again like through what we're kind of, I think, supposed to believe is some sort of like shadow Santa's workshop or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
In the Alps, I'm sure.
somewhere, yeah. We are kind of left wondering if like this is a happy ending or not.
My first takeaway was that, okay, they're trapped in the snow globe.
Yeah.
And so they are in some sort of hell that is just sort of like a Christmas time loop or something.
This was also honestly my initial understanding.
Okay.
And interpretation of the ending as well. Yeah.
Yes. And then did you evolve on that?
A little. I do think that that's kind of still where I stand though, because I know for Literary Corner you're going to tell us all about Krampus.
Yes.
But I just, from watching the movie and my other understandings of Krampus, which is honestly quite limited, he just doesn't seem like someone, like a creature, an entity that would just let somebody off scot-free like that. Mm-hmm. But then like, I think you were even mentioning like, but it's like serving as a reminder, like, did they really get off scot-free? No.
Right, because I mean, that's what Omi's story is all about,
Yeah.
that her family all got taken away to hell.
Yes.
But she was spared, but not really spared,
Not
because
really.
then she's lived with this fear for the rest of her life.
And trauma, yeah.
Yeah, from since she was a little baby child. Also, did you see the thing about the tie-in comic books?
Oh, just a little. What
Yeah.
about the comic books?
Well, this is the thing that makes me change my mind about the ending.
Okay.
Or at least the intention of the ending, whether or
Okay.
not it's my interpretation.
Yeah.
It's just that we sort of find out in the tie-in comic that after he goes after somebody like Omi, where he kills the whole family and leaves his little reminder, he then keeps a snow globe of them as like a way, more like a crystal ball to spy on them.
keep an eye on 'em.
To keep
Yeah.
an eye on them in
Yeah.
case they ever lose their Christmas spirit again.
Uh-huh.
So the reminder is there to be like, if this happens again, oh, you're going
you
down.
will not
This
be
was
so
your
lucky.
first strike, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So I mean, so in that sense,
Okay.
it implies that the family isn't stuck. He's just like, he did accept Max's sacrifice.
Yeah.
And like that his Christmas spirit has returned and that the family learned to band together or whatever. And so are better too or something. I don't know. And so like spared them or something. Showed mercy in honor of Max's sacrifice maybe. And so he's just keeping an eye on them though in case they ever slip back up again.
Right. It sounds like he's got a lot of people to keep an eye on.
He's got a lot of elves.
He does, yeah. So, and I think also my initial kind of understanding of a more negative or less happy ending to that film is just because, I mean, we've made it very clear in this podcast that I like that in a horror film. I like when there isn't a happy ending.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more realistic.
Right. That's fair.
But it is pretty ambiguous. It's pretty open and open
I think
for
with like
interpretation.
the messages of the movie, it's kind of weird to have Omi spend the whole time being like, the true meaning of Christmas is giving and sacrifice. And then Max does that and it's like, oh, actually, no, that wasn't it after all. You know, it like goes against its own themes.
Right.
But maybe that's on purpose. Maybe it was setting up those themes just to squash them. I don't know.
Right, to sort of maybe metatextually subvert the Christmas tropes. So maybe, I'm kind of feeling that like that actually probably is more accurate. I don't know if like if anyone involved in the creation of this film has like said one way or another.
As far as I could see, the what's his name? Something Doherty.
Okay.
Michael Doherty, the guy who co-wrote and directed it. He has purposely been like, I don't know, it's up to you.
It's up to you. And I think that is the right answer.
Yeah.
And so while I would like them to, yes, be living in like some sort of like weird Christmas hell.
Yeah.
That's
more of a Christmas purgatory.
More of a, you are right. It is more of a purgatory. Like while I think that's a more interesting ending to this film, like, he probably like, if we're, well, you know, is it more of a Christmas movie or is it more of a horror movie?
Yeah.
You know, are we leaning into this idea of Christmas and, like giving and sacrifice? Mm-hmm. Or are we
more into just the punishment?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. That is the other thing related to punishment. Mm-hmm. One other, like, horror thing, I guess, that I of course had to take notice of, because your girl is always looking out for the horrors of the narrative.
Always.
I do love that even in this PG-13 movie, they made sure that the first one to die was the older sister who went out looking for her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. Like, she put herself in danger to go find a boy.
Because
she's boy crazy or whatever. So it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Whore still dies first. You did it.
Well, it is worth noting that we don't actually ever see anyone die.
Yes.
We see them disappear.
Yes.
Or like we see them in great peril and then it cuts away.
Yeah.
Like at that very end and sort of, that sort of climax scene as the family has left the house and they're trying to go find help.
Yeah. People are like getting pulled under the snow.
Yeah. And it's like, they're not dead though.
Yeah.
You know? So
and we definitely could see some of them get killed because some of those like gingerbread monsters and like the toys have ways that they could hurt them.
This is true.
But those never succeed. What does succeed is the things like the giant Jack-in-the-Box monster, whose name is like Der Clown or something.
That makes sense. Yeah.
He's like eating them, but then it's like, that's not necessarily, they could just be inside there, not dead. And yeah. Things under the snow could just be under the snow, not dead. But he is explicitly sending Max into hell.
Right, yeah.
But then he wakes up. So.
But, well, yeah, exactly. Like, because I think that Max is the main character, and I think a lot of this is from his perspective. Mm-hmm. So it is sort of, it's very, like, childish in a way. That, like...
Yeah. That
his uncle falls through the snow and disappears, and that's, like, kind of...
I mean, it's part of the PG-13 of it all.
Very, yeah.
You know?
And that's kind of the like, okay, well, they're gone.
Yeah.
Might as well be dead.
What happens to Omi? Does the camera just cut away when she has her stand up with
Krampus?
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't really see it.
Yeah. Well, and then, you're right. When, what's his sister's name again?
Beth.
Beth, that's right. When Beth leaves, right, she is meant to be by herself, so it's not like Max knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the sort of the... like premonition of what's to come. Mm-hmm. Other than the fact that they had like a crazy, random, incredibly severe blizzard.
Yeah.
And
there's creepy snowmen.
And well, we start with one creepy snowman, and then it does begin to multiply, which is even creepier.
And like move.
Yes.
Not when we're watching,
but move. Yeah, you're totally right. And just thinking about Beth going out into that storm makes me think of something that I notice in almost every member of this family.
Yeah.
Which is that like they are so bad at appropriately dressing for winter weather.
I know.
Like they've got like a sweater on.
I mean, first off, I would not let my daughter go out in that weather.
No.
I just wouldn't.
No.
I just wouldn't. I'm like, I don't. Sorry about your boyfriend, but he has his family.
Yeah.
You stay with yours.
Yeah. I agree. I probably would have said the same thing. Or if she's gonna go out, I'm like, you need a hat, you need a scarf, you need a windbreaker because it's cold as fuck.
Let's see if your uncle can go with you in his fucking badass truck, whatever thing.
Yes, sure, whatever.
You know, and drive you over.
Yeah, even if it's just a few blocks away.
Because you're not walking in this.
No,
you'll get hypothermia and die.
It's dangerous for sure.
True horror of Christmas.
I have some other true horrors of Christmas that are not hypothermia.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I was re-listening to our Black Christmas episode to remind me what we talked about Christmas horror last year, right? But then I also re-listened to a bit of the Ready or Not episode because I wanted to talk about horror comedy. And I know that we did that just a little bit in that episode. So it's like, I just want to see what I already said, you know? And it was interesting because as I was listening to that episode, you know, we mentioned that I think one of the themes in Ready or Not is like tradition versus modernity.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like also in this film.
Yes.
Which, I mean, you know, is like, it's a solid theme.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
And
especially, modernity is often a location of horror.
Absolutely.
As is, you know.
And tradition,
scary,
for that matter.
Traditions,
yeah. Like we see this like with the fact that like Max's grandma Omi is like still pretty adamant about speaking German.
Yeah,
we do know that she speaks English, and that's something Aunt Dorothy like English. I knew it, you know. And it's like, yeah, she's been living in the United States for quite a while. I'm sure she's picked up English.
It's not comfortable to her, and also her family can fucking learn German and speak it with her.
She's in her own home.
I mean, and it's clear that Max understands it, even if he doesn't speak it with her. And Tom speaks it with her once.
A little,
So, like, they know.
They understand, right? And then also just everything that's happening with Sarah, with Toni Collette's character, about, like, making Christmas.
Oh, yeah. The big one for me
deal.
was the one where she comes home and sees that Omi has made a bunch of cookies. Like, she's baking all these beautiful, traditional Austrian baked goods. Yeah. And Sarah's like, I literally just bought cookies from the store.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You knew I was going to buy some cookies from the store. Why are you baking cookies? Which, made me think of my mom and grandmother.
Yeah.
You literally said that you didn't want turkey for Thanksgiving. Why are you making a turkey right now? I brought chicken.
Oh, no.
But also was like a very classic, like, here's modernity. We go to the store and buy it. Yeah. Mass-produced cookies versus here's Omi. Like, what about a taste from Austria?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about, you know, what we've been doing for decades and decades, right?
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, there is something to be said about the convenience of a store-bought cookie. Mm-hmm. For sure. It'll do in a pinch. But there's also almost nothing better than, like, a homemade cookie.
And, like, Sarah, if you have a mother-in-law who is, like, down to bake a shit ton of cookies.
Yeah, let her.
That takes something off of your plate.
Oh my gosh, yes, Sarah is so busy.
Yeah. I feel like really what it was just like a lack of communication.
Yes.
That maybe was willful on their part, if not just sort of based in like ignorance of each other. Like, I don't know how close. Omi just seems very closed off. Perhaps just because she only really ever wants to speak German.
Yeah.
You know, where she just doesn't seem as connected to the rest of the family. She's always kind of just in the background there. Mm-hmm. You know, except for with Max. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, did Sarah actually tell Omi that she was going to buy cookies? Did Omi tell anybody that she was going to bake cookies? Like, did they talk about it at all, what the cookie plan was?
Yeah.
Or did they just both assume and then, like, are just walking all over each other on accident?
Right.
I don't know. There was actually a good article by Chris Sasagwe at The Collider. Talking about Krampus as a story about immigrants.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
He has this whole section about how Omi's choice not to tell her story about Krampus sooner.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, like, if she had said something sooner, that could have changed the narrative a little bit, and maybe could have saved people, depending on how much people actually listen to her, which
I
they
know,
don't
right?
seem to, but, like,
especially some of the members of that family.
But, like, maybe if
about.
this was a story that she told to her son and to her grandchildren as they were growing up, then they would have, like, recognized the signs and be like, oh my God, Omi's story was true, even if they always thought it was just, like, a story. You know, something like that. And so, but he says that, like, in Krampus, it is the shame a grandmother feels from her childhood in a different country that keeps her quiet. Omi remains the only one in her family who knows German. If her son or grandson know more of the language, perhaps they would ask about her past, something she certainly wouldn't want to divulge before the events of the film. So she kept to herself. Omi's secret is a cinematic representation of the shame and otherness first-generation immigrants in the United States feel. They hope to assimilate as best as they can and ensure their children aren't seen as outsiders due to their un-American heritage. In doing so, the second and third generations don't gain an essential part of their identity. And so the idea is that because they didn't get Omi's story, they were not prepared for this Krampus situation, and like
to their detriment.
Yeah. And so that loss of tradition is like really the crux of the film. It was an interesting article.
That is interesting. I love that. Yeah. Well, and it is interesting because, like this is, again, when I was re-listening to Black Christmas, I mentioned, and I do still believe that like, it's not a film that necessarily needs to take place during Christmas. Meanwhile, Krampus is, right? That's kind of the whole point. And then I was thinking about other Christmas horror movies. I'm like, is it imperative that it takes place during Christmas? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Often it's just imperative that it takes place at a time when like there's a gathering.
People are getting together.
Or other people are hard to get a hold of,
Yeah. And so, I was kind of thinking about like, this is a Christmas movie, right? So what is Christmas about? What does it represent, right? And it's a lot of things to a lot of people. And, well, at first I was just like, well, it's like a Christian holiday. It's an incredibly important holiday for Christians. But I was like, but is this family very Christian?
No.
No, I don't think so.
They seem to be celebrating. I mean, other than at the beginning that they're in some sort of nativity scene.
Yeah, but that also seemed like something that was happening through like school or
right.
something
It was
else.
with a bunch of, it could have been through a church group.
Or church, maybe.
It could have been. But they had no talk about like, oh, we're not going to be able to go to the Sunday service or something, because of the storm or something. Like they could have made a point of them being Christian and they didn't.
Or help us understand what this family's religious beliefs are.
But I think they're just sort of that generic Americanized Christmas.
Yeah. So, well, just a couple of things. So I know we don't have a ton to say about Aunt Dorothy other than she's hilarious. But she mentions a couple things. She mentions not feeling this hungover since the Pope died.
Oh, yes.
That's an interesting little line that she does not elaborate on. And then she also, at the kind of the beginning of that film, towards like that end of the first act, where she asks if why Sarah didn't make a ham for Christmas when it's not even Christmas. Yeah. It's not even Christmas Eve.
No, it's like December 20th or something ridiculous.
Yeah, like the 21st or 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she's just like, who doesn't make a ham for Christmas? What are you, Jewish?
Oh, yeah.
And then like there are some like glances exchanged, and I'm just like, are they? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think that goes back to the like sort of what we were saying with Omi and like tradition being lost. Like Aunt Dorothy is from a previous generation.
Right.
So maybe the previous generation was Christian and perhaps like, Italian Catholics or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? Something.
She gives a fuck about the Pope.
Yeah, something like that. But then now, like the next generation is less Christian. I mean, I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that Howard and Linda are Christian just based on like all the other things they say.
Right.
That are very like...
They're definitely playing into like a specific American stereotype.
Yeah, the gun-toting.
Yeah.
God-fearing.
Conservative.
Yeah.
Probably at least a little bit religious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Religious in name, if not, necessarily engaging as much in like the traditions of it, maybe, But like would make a point of like, well, that goes against my religious beliefs.
Yeah. That's not in the Bible.
Yeah. But maybe that hasn't really gotten, like maybe Sarah let that part of her family's history go more and isn't really raising her kids that way.
Yeah. But then I also think about Christmas as, any given winter holiday, and there are so many that like really at its core is about celebrating the fact that the days are getting longer and that light will triumph over the darkness. Yep. And that in the meantime, during this winter, the cold and the dark, we need to like bring in as much warmth and as much light as we can.
That's absolutely what they're all about.
And we see that especially in like when Omi keeps talking about why it's important to keep the fire hot.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yes, it is to actually keep away the
Krampus
minions.
and his minions, yeah.
But it's also light and warmth.
Yeah.
Which is like a big winter holiday thing.
And it's like very contrasted too when we finally do get to the boyfriend Derek's house.
Oh, yeah.
To try to find Beth.
It's all fucked up.
And it's like clear that the place is like covered in ice and like the fireplace is like cold.
Yes.
And it is dark in there because all the electricity is gone.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a real contrast to them all like huddled up in their living room around the fireplace with all their blankets and like the little bit of lights that they can find on their tablets and whatever that they're wasting the batteries on.
I mean, what else are they going to use it for?
That's what
really?
They say. I'm like, you're right. Yeah. Let the kids have some entertainment because shit's scary right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we don't know what's going on.
And you can't use it to get on the internet to like or call people. So like, read a story. Yeah. Watch TV.
I also see one other kind of theme, which is like, again, thinking about the horror of Christmas, and that, you know, it is kind of this time to where it is dark and it's cold and it's a time to tell scary stories, you know. But I'm also thinking about just like thinking about the fact that like Max is our main character and that he is a young child. He's supposed to be like 10 or something.
Right, yeah.
That
like just a little bit too old to still believe in
a
Santa.
little too old. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's like make him 8.
Yeah,
you know,
but I think that's the point. Is that he's still.
Yeah,
it's like unusual that he's managed to still hold on to the Christmas
and it's like
spirit.
It's a point of interest for his family,
and that makes it more of a big deal when he loses it.
Yes, but there is kind of also like just the horror of growing up.
Yeah.
And like when it just relates to when we grow up, we just kind of get these like series of revealed secrets that kind of kill our innocence,
right? Yeah.
You know, like the fact, like for instance, that Santa's not real, you know, or in this case, that Santa has like a shadow self,
yeah, which is a much worse secret.
Oh, yeah, actually, that is worse.
Yeah,
I agree. What else?
Though I don't know. Is it because I feel like if you find out Santa has a dark secret or dark shadow, then it kind of implies that Santa also exists, and that's magical and wonderful,
right? Oh, that makes me think of the movie Devil.
Oh, because the devil existing implies there's a god.
Yeah, so like if the devil's real, then the other guy's got to be real too. You know, I'm like, well, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely that idea of loss of innocence and like just childhood in general. Yes. I mean, of course, it's like toys and stuff that are attacking them, but also just the idea that Krampus in particular is like specifically leaving behind a child to be a reminder. Like he leaves Omi behind, and his plan is clearly to leave Max behind as like this lone child who now has to very quickly be an adult.
Yeah,
because what the fuck's he gonna do?
Yeah.
Like Max is just gonna be like Omi was suddenly an orphan,
right? Yeah,
in like post World War II Austria. Like what the fuck? You know, like she needs to grow up immediately.
Yeah.
And like she just witnessed something horrible and all that trauma of that. You know, and that was gonna happen to Max too.
Yeah, it was.
I do think Omi's story is like interesting to me.
Yeah.
It goes to another theme that we've sort of touched on of like hope. And like how the whole point of this is like sort of in line with it Christmas being about sacrifice or whatever and giving. It's also about like holding on to hope when it's dark, because you have to have the hope that the light will return, as we've been saying. And I think Omi has the line that's like, it's not what you do, it's what you believe and what you've let go of and hear her heart, you know, like pointing to her heart.
Yeah.
That is like hope and belief is more important than anything else, you know? But I think that's like the point that Omi is trying to make with her story, that like they all lost hope and they all lost the Christmas spirit.
And that's why Krampus came for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they all turned against each other. But I'm like, okay, there's like, the story she tells us about there not being enough food to go around and everyone's turning on each other. And so it's like everybody's fault that Krampus showed up, especially hers, because she was the last one with hope. And so it's her fault that she lost it, even though that implies everybody else lost it first. So it's not her fault.
Right.
She actually held out the longest. So she's like the best.
And was like living in a pretty objectively hopeless situation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like that seems systemic. Like if you're like, this is post World War II, like Germany, Austria, something like that.
Is that a confirmation? Because I was always wondering, I was like, what? I'm imagining that we're talking about World War II. But like I wasn't quite sure.
I couldn't see it any other way.
Neither could I.
Based on like her age and just the story. I mean, it's so the situation with the bread is like so classic, like post-war Germany imagery.
Yeah, bread truck. Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
And I just feel like I don't think it mattered, that a girl burned a Santa doll or that her family, you know,
yeah,
or that like people were fighting over bread. Like, yeah, there wasn't enough fucking bread because of like systemic issues, like because of the circumstances. Like, sure, I mean, I guess they should.
You can only be expected to hold on to hope for so long.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like none of that was her fault.
No.
Why is Krampus making this her fault? Yeah. I mean, and I guess it's kind of the same with Max. It's like I don't really know what he's getting. I don't know why they're putting so much on these children.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Like it's their fault that they couldn't still believe when it's like,
or they're the ones who have to like be the martyr.
Yeah.
Or like be the
it's
reminder.
All on them. To like hold on, like to hold the whole family together or something.
Right.
I don't know. It's just putting a lot on children.
Yeah. And then that kind of, again, just sort of makes me think that this is kind of from a child's perspective in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Again, being PG-13.
Yeah. Well, and I also think in general, a lot of the like winter holidays, or at least in like Christian tradition, which is what I'm most familiar with from like medieval studies and stuff.
Yeah.
That like most of those like different feasts that they would have, you know, in the nights leading up to and following Christmas, like a lot of them were kind of children oriented.
Really?
From the beginning, you know, and it was about like gifts and things.
Yeah.
And like a time to like keep the children's hope up so that they can get through Christmas or get through the winter, I mean.
Get through winter, yeah.
And I'm like, so then that means it's not the child's responsibility to keep their hope up. It's the adult's responsibility to keep the child's hope up, you know? And if the child is losing their hope, that's the adult's fault.
And there are some pretty crazy adults in this movie.
Oh, God, yeah.
The kids are crazy too.
Yeah.
But there's some pretty interesting adults in this film.
Should we start talking about some of these characters?
Let's. Who do you want to start with?
I don't know. We were talking about childhood, so we could just start with Max,
Let's start with
our
Max.
final boy.
Yeah, he is our final boy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it has to happen that
Well,
the parents are taken and then the last cousin is taken and then it's just him to face Krampus because, yeah, he's the last boy. He's the final boy.
yeah. But it is interesting, especially because we already kind of talked about Omi's story, but like Max and Omi's stories parallel each other like almost exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I also just think it's really interesting that we get that story like in an
Oh, yeah. That like
animation?
stop motion sort of
Yeah.
feel to it.
there's like an interesting shift in tone
Yeah.
that I didn't hate.
I know, especially
Yeah.
with the idea of it calling to mind other Christmas movies.
Yes.
Like with stop motion, I think of a lot of Christmas movies.
specials, absolutely.
Like Rudolph and all of that.
Yeah, so like it makes it like pretty obvious that there's like a larger conflict going on, you know. And then so it's like a similar thing with Max, like there's apparently conflict going on for him, but it's a little more internal,
Yeah.
you know, than external, like a larger like global conflict.
Yeah.
They do talk like there is a lot of mentions of Tom and Sarah, his parents, like maybe not getting along as well as they used to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like his letter to Santa says a lot.
It does, yeah.
Like, yeah, he wants to spend more time with his sister.
Yeah,
which I
like
think is
he
also
used
just
to.
a part of growing up.
Yeah.
like she's not a child anymore.
Yeah.
she's spending time with her boyfriend.
She's an adolescent. She has a
Yeah.
boyfriend. That's what's
Yeah.
her focus and her priority. Yep.
Yeah, and then he
Yep.
wants his parents to fall in love again.
Yeah.
It's really sweet how he
like-
says it though,
That is sweet.
because it's like
Yeah.
it's not that they don't love each other still. It's just that they're away from each other.
Yeah,
a
they
lot
don't have
'cause of
time
his
for each
job,
other.
That they've like lost time for each other. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not that they're fighting a lot. Or,
Yeah.
like, that they don't care about each other.
But also Max is 10 years old and like has no idea how adult relationships work.
That too.
But that is very sweet.
Yeah, it is very sweet, and it does like just based on what we see later of their relationship, it does seem to be like the case
Yeah.
that's what's going on with their relationship.
Yeah.
because Sarah has some line to her husband about like, I miss us.
Yeah.
One of those kind of
And in the beginning, yeah, like Tom has to take a call and he's like, she's like, I thought you weren't going to be
Yeah.
working. And she's like, I'm not traveling. I still have to take calls.
Yeah,
Whatever.
and to be fair, it's only December 22nd.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Let the man take a call.
Let the man take a call.
Yeah, yeah. And then what else is in his letter?
Well, he talks about how this is like an interesting little thing about class between Sarah and so Sarah's sister
Is
Helen.
Linda.
Who's
Yeah.
Helen? I don't know.
There is no Helen.
Linda. There's no Helen.
Yeah, Sarah's sister is Linda because
They're sisters. Okay.
yeah, because the aunt is both of their aunts.
Yes, and then they have both. They have married
very different men
different men. Yes, and had children with those very different men.
and have very distinct class differences.
Very much so.
And it
yeah.
kind of seems. I feel like it's implied that Linda maybe is more still of the class of like her side of the family. Just because like there are comments about their aunt living
Yes.
in like a trailer park or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
and things like that. You
Yep,
know,
you're
and
totally
it does seem
right.
like Linda and Howard are doing better than that, just because Howard has a fancy car and a gun. But
Well, he's got that. Yeah, that massive. Car.
but then but Max makes a point of being like, I wish things could be easier for them.
Yeah.
They're like worried about money or something.
Yeah, well, and then like Howard and Linda do like when the like creepy Krampus bag shows up, they just bring it into the house.
Yeah.
just bring it across the threshold.
I know. Yeah, and they have some
And just say
comments.
some shit about like fucking rich people.
Yeah,
you know?
like how come rich people always get free things?
So what is Max's job? You are right. That is true. Yeah.
What is Howard's job?
No, Max. No, not Max. Sorry, Tom.
Oh.
What is his job?
I don't know. Some sort of fancy corporate job, I guess.
Sarah doesn't appear to work.
Yeah, though also she could be on a break.
A break, yeah.
But
Or she could like work seasonally or part-time or
Yeah.
who fucking knows. But
I don't, I mean, it's just sort of implied that he has some fancy job where he travels a lot.
because like, where is this money coming from? It's not Sarah's side of the family.
I don't
so
know.
It must
He's like
be
some
Tom's.
sort of corporate consultant or
Yeah,
something. And he goes to
shit.
different businesses.
Yeah.
And like, it was like, this is how you make it better or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they don't look like crazy, outrageous rich, but they are very, very comfortably upper middle class.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
house looks real nice.
And she's got lots of fancy stuff in it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And then also in the letter
about the what I like.
what do you like?
The one about how he wishes his uncle would stop wishing his daughters were sons.
Yeah, and then Stevie Jordan's like, "Shut up! Dad does not wish we were boys."
And it's like, look at your outfits, look at your names.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, babies.
They do.
I know
He
this
does.
is a sensitive point for you, but
I
maybe
know.
you should confront it.
And this is something you're going to be working on for a long time. I know, but yeah,
I like them.
yeah, Stevie and Jordan are cute.
Yeah, and nothing about his boy cousin. Howie Jr.
No, fuck Howie Jr. Howie Jr. doesn't even talk.
He doesn't talk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that on purpose?
Yeah, is this like
Are we going to address the fact that Howie Jr. is like mute? Has
and
he
I
faced
think
some trauma?
he goes second, right? Because he gets tricked by the.
Oh God,
they do
that's
make him
such a good
seem like
point,
really dumb.
Yeah, like he's going down. Like I don't know. I kind of felt like for a moment they were playing with some like sins.
Sure,
leading to downfall thing, and that his was like a gluttony thing. Well, and just with the girl cousins are like really fiery and you know like straight to like anger and stuff, and then he's like really gluttonous, and then there's like their mom who's like when the presents get all burned up, she's like, I need to rewrap these all. That feels very like consumerist and greedy, even though she's doing it because she's like for the kids.
Yeah,
but it's I don't know. So I thought they were maybe doing something, but his was very much a like. Look at this gluttonous little chubby boy.
Yeah,
who can't resist a fucking gingerbread hanging down from the like what?
On a hook.
That's a weird choice, Howie Jr.
That he's not using his context clues. That like the situation might not be safe. Yeah.
So I understand.
Or it is at night. Like maybe he thinks he's dreaming or something. But
Maybe he's not fully awake, and he's just like, oh yeah, why not? I want a gingerbread. That looks delicious.
Yeah, I know.
Has Omi not made you enough fucking cookies?
Yeah, right. Have you not had enough?
Maybe he's like, I don't know. These look foreign.
I don't think Howie Jr. knows the word foreign. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. So, that's like it is a very like honest and aware,
like insightful
letter.
Yeah.
For a 10-year-old who still believes in Santa.
Yeah. Like, and that these are the things he's genuinely wishing for is just for like his family to be happier.
Yeah.
And like to get along better. And this is this right before or right after probably the talk comes first with his dad where he's like, why do we have to hang out with these people?
Just because we share DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his dad's like, that's just what family does. You just kind of got to. And then he does have something that's like a little bit better about like, so that we can learn how to get along despite our differences. Mm-hmm. That's not the exact line, but it's something like that. Yeah. That's the implied idea. Yeah. And that is another like, I guess, theme or message of the movie is to like get along despite your differences or something. But
right. Well, and we talked about this in our Black Christmas episode that like Christmas is a fantastic opportunity and excuse to have a lot of people gathered together, especially people who don't necessarily like each other.
Yeah, which is why there are a lot of like
members of families.
There are a lot of Christmas murder mysteries too for that reason. Yeah.
It's like, being forced to spend time with family, even if like there's a lot of things that you don't see eye to eye on or just like don't necessarily enjoy spending time with them.
Yeah.
And then Max says, why do we have to put up with them just because we share DNA? And I would say that all sides of the family are really digging in. Like Sarah says something about like, well, I just thought you would like something besides mac and cheese and hot dogs.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, let him eat mac and cheese and hot dogs.
Yeah, that sounds delicious.
Yeah. And then, they're just like.
But then they're also like not willing to even to even try her
like fancy stuff.
Yeah, it's like, she cooked this for you.
Yeah,
like,
Aunt Dorothy's like.
She worked hard on it.
Heck yeah. Oh, Sarah's working her ass off.
Yeah. So like at least try the food.
Yeah. And and like what does Aunt Dorothy say? Like looks like Martha Stewart threw up in here, Yeah,
there's like a lot of judgment before they start judgment forward. Before they do anything else.
Yeah, they are not giving each other the benefit of the doubt. That is
none of Max's insight. And I think that is actually kind of like, I don't know, interesting when thinking about like I want to say the relationship between Max and Krampus, because there's always a relationship between the final girl and the slasher
this is
killer.
true, yeah.
You know, in this case, between our monster and our final boy. And Krampus's thing is sort of about like that first initial judgment. He is bringing judgment. He is bringing punishment because you lost your Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
But then Max being able to be like, no, there's like more here, and getting him to sort of like change that view that he has. And also in the process, getting his family to sort of like rethink what they feel about each other. Like Tom and Howard end up really kind of weirdly getting along and like teaming up a bunch. And like Sarah and Linda do a little bit of sister bonding. And definitely they all get, it seems, closer to their kids before they lose their kids.
I mean,
you know? And I also really love that it's not just that Krampus like shows them like mercy, I guess, which is the thing that you feel like isn't very Krampus, and we're going to get back to that.
Okay, can't wait. Yeah.
But it's also that like Max shows Krampus like compassion. Like I love the idea of our final boy apologizing to the monster.
Yeah.
That's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And he does. He like when he's going there to like sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sorry. I forgot what the meaning of Christmas was. I was the one who fucked up. I understand why you're doing all of this. Like, almost like, I don't blame you. Even though it's like, maybe you should. This is a little bit of an overreaction for tearing up a letter.
And then there is that, like, then in that scene where, like, Max cries, like, one single tear, right?
Tear, yes.
And, like, Krampus is, like, you know, taloned hand, like, kind of, like, picks up the tear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is he gonna drink it? Like what? I couldn't tell where it was going. Yeah. And it's like, is he relishing in the tears of the child, or are they like,
or is it this moment of empathy between them?
Is this like touching?
Is this Krampus being like, wow, this boy has truly regained his Christmas spirit. He truly understands that it's about sacrifice and giving. And he sort of helped his family understand that too.
This is a sufficient repentance.
You know, especially since even before Max sacrifices himself, a lot of the other family members kind of sacrifice themselves too. Yeah. In like quicker moments without, I mean, Omi makes a kind of a big deal about it. She's like, I need to face Krampus. You guys go.
Yeah.
Sort of like to buy time, I guess. But
Tom does the same thing.
Yeah. He's like, you got to go. I'm stuck in the snow with the, okay. We will talk about Krampus's other minions, but just while we're here, what is the fucking snow beast?
No idea. Not the slightest clue.
Okay. Yeah. That's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, what's that like kind of thing that we see a few times, just sort of like as a lump moving under the snow?
That has teeth?
I guess.
Because his leg, because Howard gets away from it, but his leg's all torn up.
Oh.
Right? He's like bleeding.
I cannot recall.
He's bleeding because then they have to bandage him up, and they're like trying to keep the kids out of the area to not see it. This is when they first went looking for Beth before they figured out what was going on.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he's like bloody. And I'm like, what is biting you under the snow? What is this?
I don't know.
And definitely in my Krampus research and other like Christmas stuff, I'm like, Christmas snow beast? And nothing. So I don't know. So if anybody's got theories, hit me up.
Certainly there has to be
I even
some
Googled,
kind of lore.
I Googled, I was like, what is the Krampus Christmas snow beast? And there was like some wiki for a thing for Krampus and for villains or whatever it was, horror stuff. And it was just like, he's a snow beast. He lives under the snow.
What is his origin?
Yeah. Is he a worm? Is he a hellhound?
Yeah.
Like, what even is he?
Yeah.
Okay, that was an aside though.
Anyway.
I will never mention the snow beast again.
We have a couple more characters to talk about, I think, before we get into Krampus.
Yeah. We've already talked about Tom and Sarah a bit.
Sarah, I just want to reiterate, I think that Sarah's just working way too hard.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, who are you doing this for?
Exactly, because like her family doesn't really seem to care
and
or treat it with animosity.
Yeah, and even with Max, who loves Christmas, these aren't the things about Christmas that he loves.
Right.
So it's just sort of like she's doing it, she's playing the part of the good housewife.
Yeah, she's like kind of trapped in an idea
which I feel like,
motherhood.
Which I feel like maybe is what's happened sort of with her husband, Tom, too, where he's playing the role of the good husband who has the nice fancy job, but is away a lot.
Yeah.
They're sort of playing the archetypes of like the traditional family.
Right.
And they even have like their two children, one boy and one girl. And
it's
like all very traditional.
And it's like not working for them.
Yeah. Because it's like that's not really what they were meant to be or something.
Yeah.
And it does make you wonder if they do have their memories of Krampus and everything that happened and their little talk about how much they miss each other. Like, is he going to cut back his hours?
Yeah.
Is she going to change how she celebrates Christmas? I mean, they all have to change how they celebrate Christmas. A, more spirit. B, less consumerism.
Yeah. Less time at the mall. Yeah. Yeah, and then there's Howard.
Yeah.
Who we're going to talk about horror comedies here in a little bit, and
he's definitely
the one bringing the comedy. Well, the fact that he's played by David Koechner is like a huge thing, right?
I also really like the actress who plays Linda, though I don't know her name.
I
just see her in things all the time.
Allison Tolman.
Yeah, I'm always happy when I see her.
She's in stuff.
Yeah, she's in stuff all the time, and she's
is
a gem.
Yeah,
she is a gem. She always does the assignment.
Yes. But Howard is funny, well, especially because like him and Tom are like the two adult men.
Yeah.
And they are kind of like this unlikely duo.
Yeah, they're clearly meant to be like foils, where we have the one who's like, here's my big gun, and the other one's who's like, well, I was an Eagle Scout. So it's just like these two very different ideas
I know a
of
little
like
German.
survival or whatever, you know?
So they're like two different kinds of masculinity.
Yeah.
And Howard's definitely bought into like a trap of a very like rigid idea of masculinity.
Yeah.
And
I also kind of feel like Tom did too, just in like a different direction.
A different way.
Of that like upper class working all the time.
They're both bought into the provider, but the way they provide, very different.
Yeah,
you're
because
totally
then they have that line that they say back and forth to each other about how like the shepherd has to protect his flock. That becomes like their point of
thing.
Which is still a very masculine ideal of like, I am the protector.
Yes.
This is my property.
I'm the shepherd.
Because I'm a shepherd and they're all sheep.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's funny, Howard, he is the one who offers to like stay up for the first watch.
Yeah.
But he falls asleep.
Which, you know... It's rough.
Because Tom was like, I'll stay up. And he's like, no, I'll do it.
I'm the big man.
And then he falls asleep.
Yeah. And it's like, you wake somebody else up before you fall asleep. If you're starting to nod off, you wake somebody else up. It's
wake
simple.
up Tom. He wanted to.
God. But no, he has to do everything himself because he's the big man.
Yeah.
But then later through the movie, he learns to collaborate.
Yes.
And get help from others.
Because as a result of that, that's what like gets his kid. That's what gets Howie Jr.
His son.
His actual boy. Yeah.
Yeah. The baby girl is a girl?
Yeah, Chrissy or something. Okay. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Literal baby. Yeah.
And I suppose Linda and Sarah are meant to be foils for each other too.
Sure.
But a lot of that comes in that class way.
Yeah.
Of really, emphasizing their differences in their class and like implied political beliefs and things like that.
Yep. And then,
but it's all very white Americana.
Very. And then there's Aunt Dorothy, who's, just again, like, Christmas is a time to be with family, even if you don't like them very much. Like, I think Aunt Dorothy's there to really hammer that home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even like both sides of the family are like, oh God, Aunt Dorothy.
Yeah.
Like nobody's happy about it.
And then of course, there's the character of Krampus.
Yeah. Who gets brought forth through some sort of summoning spell that Max accidentally does by tearing up a letter, which I still think is a very low bar.
It is a low bar. Although, was it not a full moon?
Oh, perhaps.
Remember, because he throws it and then the wind
does he do it on the solstice too?
Maybe this is the solstice. I don't know.
But as I learned from my Krampus research.
Yes.
Krampus night is December 5th.
I was going to say the 6th.
So,
okay. We just
December
missed it.
5th, December 6th is the feast of St. Nicholas.
Oh, it's St. Nicholas feast. Okay. Yeah, that tracks.
So, but I do like a lot of things about the design of Krampus in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I love that he's covered in chains, and so they like jingle bells.
Yeah.
I like that they call him the dark shadow of St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
Who comes to punish and takes instead of giving. Mm-hmm. Like it's a lot of good.
I love
language.
the horns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we do finally, it does take a while towards like that and like kind of climax scene. You like actually get to see his face.
Except.
It's pretty creepy.
Apparently, that is a mask.
Yeah, it looks like a mask. Yeah, because his face doesn't
I thought it looked
move
like a mask, but it wasn't supposed to be. I thought it was just poorly done. But it's intentionally a mask hiding Krampus's real face.
Actual face. Oh.
That was the intention with it. Because you could kind of see different kinds of eyes moving behind it that like don't really line up with the eye holes. My eyes aren't good enough to see that. And things about like you can see his real mouth behind the unmoving mouth. Things like that, where it's like there's something more bestial on underneath that mask that's like some sort of perversion of Santa Claus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is giving like a weird, distorted version of Santa Claus. Yeah, love it.
And I do love that everything in this movie is like Krampus, like perverting the symbols of Christmas to his will.
Yes.
It's like the creepy snowman that we talked about getting closer.
The Jack in the Box.
Yeah, them coming through the fireplace, of course, just like Saint Nick.
The angel and the teddy bear.
Yeah, all the presents. Yeah, the tree and the presents go up in flame.
Yes.
Which is, it's like nothing sacred anymore.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting that like, it's a good understanding of Christmas and the Krampus mythology that all of his servants and Krampus himself seem particularly focused on children.
Yeah.
Like they're definitely like Linda spends some time wrapping up those gifts again.
Yeah.
And they could all just fucking kill her and take her or whatever, but instead they wait until her daughters go up.
Right.
Or they specifically lure her daughters up.
That's
so that
right,
they can eat the daughters. Like they want the children instead. Like they all have a preference for children.
Delicious children.
And they also like, there are moments like when the elves come in where they like specifically take the baby.
Yes.
And they take Aunt Dorothy too.
They do take Aunt Dorothy too. Yeah.
But I feel like she's kind of getting in the way, you know?
Yeah.
It just seems like they're like, it also seems like they're doing a very like cat and mouse thing. Where it's like there are lots of times where it's like, oh, you could have just done it. Could have just killed this person, but instead you're like gonna kind of wander around. You're gonna do these weird tricks where you're gonna put down a gingerbread on a hook.
Yeah.
And like if nobody bites it, then nobody bites it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're doing this thing where they're kind of dragging it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, I liked the writer and director, Michael Dougherty. He talks about, you know, Krampus as the shadow of Santa Claus. And he says, he's not the unstoppable monster that kicks down your door and rampages and grabs you. There's something darkly playful about him. He's having a good time doing what he does, and he enjoys the cat and mouse aspect of it. And I just found that interesting, also thinking about Santa Claus as like a jolly, playful figure.
Yeah.
So then, of course, his dark shadow would also be like a playful,
Yeah.
jolly figure, but in a very dark, different way.
The way a cat does with a mouse.
Yeah.
Which is like actually pretty fucked up if you think about it. And from a human perspective, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really like the way that he like explodes the chimneys.
Yeah.
Like kind of like, well, I mean, I don't know anything about home foundations, but it seems like pretty irreversible damage. Like he really fucks up that chimney.
Yeah,
those chimneys.
Yeah.
Like that again.
He's not fucking around.
Yeah, it's like now Santa can't come down your chimney because it's fucking broken.
Yeah.
You know?
There are no good children here.
No.
Don't even try.
And I mean, also, I think it's worth noting that like Krampus, through one way or another, is capable of creating portals to the underworld.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense. Can Santa do anything like that?
I don't know. Yeah. Does Santa have control over the weather?
Right?
I mean, Santa definitely, I feel like it's implied that Santa has, if not teleportation abilities, then certainly fast travel.
Right, yeah.
Obviously, to get all those presents around.
Yeah.
So Santa definitely has a number of powers himself, but I don't know. Krampus is a very powerful being.
Yeah. Well, but also, like, when he opens that portal to the underworld, that is when they are having, like, their little...
That's true. Maybe he can't do that all the time.
Yeah, maybe it's, like, a ritual that has to be performed and maybe requires some sort of sacrifice or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to know
Oh,
about
my God, I cannot freaking
the
wait.
true real-life Krampus as he exists in the real world as a real person?
Oh, my
No,
God.
I'm
No,
kidding.
okay, okay. All right.
I had you for a second.
You
I didn't
did,
mean
yeah.
to.
I was stoked.
I didn't
yeah.
mean to.
I'm just excited. Yeah. Literary Krampus. I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. I do, first thing, just want to give props to the movie that apparently, I mean, I don't know the difference, but from what I read, Tom and Omi are like specifically speaking an Austrian dialect of German.
Fantastic.
And like Austria is like the place that Krampus is most associated with. He definitely has like mythologies in other places.
I
like,
always
throughout
thought of
Germany.
him as German.
Yeah.
But I think there is such a
yeah.
connection between Austrian and German.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's just sort of considered one of those Alpine sort of Germanic
sure.
figures.
Well,
that,
and
like,
also, I mean, Germany had themselves a pretty nice empire for a while. And
Yeah,
I think
so-
Austria was part of it. So,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, so I do appreciate that they like. I get the feeling that this movie did its research, I guess is what I'm saying with that, and a few other things. I guess the cookies that Omi bakes are also like specifically Austrian, so it's like clearly supposed to be Austria. I mean, from what I read,
Okay.
I have no evidence of
Yeah,
this,
I love that.
but also the idea of Krampus wearing a mask and it not being his real face. There are also, we talk a little bit in our, just keep going back to our Black Christmas episode.
I mean, you know.
We mentioned like Belschnickel, who is like
Yes.
another figure similar to Krampus, who is known for like wearing a mask too.
Oh,
And so
okay,
like
yeah.
there's like things, they're like
Oh, yeah, with the tongue.
connections.
Which is also something...
Well, there's also a Krampus
a
thing.
Krampus thing, yeah.
There's a lot of connection between a lot of these like dark winter companions to Santa.
Wait, so
or Saint Nick.
Is Belschnickel specifically German?
He is another
Whereas
German
Krampus
figure.
is a little bit more Austrian.
I do not know enough to distinguish between these different areas. I'm going to be honest. You're
Got
more of
you.
the geography
I
person
am the
than
one.
me.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And plus, I mean, when these things were arriving in like the Middle Ages,
Yeah.
when these myths were coming up, you know, and some of them pagan times, you know, it's like what was Austria,
Exactly.
you know?
Well, and also,
it's like, it's like Krampus specifically in like a particular area of
Yeah.
Austria, not
Well,
like all of Austria.
and it's similar like in the United States as it exists today. Like there are things that are incredibly like culturally significant in some parts of the country and nobody gives a fuck about them in other parts of the country. Well, and I'm just thinking about Germany. It's like Oktoberfest. Like Oktoberfest is celebrated in like 2 parts of Germany. You know, like it's not this national celebration.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that there are places to just jump ahead to like modern celebration of Krampus.
Yeah.
There are these things called like Krampus runs that are held that are getting more popular recently. But are like in very specific small places, like very specific places where these happen. They aren't happening like all over Germany or all over Austria, you know, but it is just sort of like one of those events, kind of like Santa runs or whatever, where people just dress up as Krampus and mostly adult men and go around and just sort of like kind of try to scare people and drink and have fun. You know, it's just one of those sort of like fun nighttime debauchery things that have led to some injuries.
I mean, we ran into that Santa crawl like literally yesterday.
It's very that vibe, you know, but yeah, like you were saying with Oktoberfest, it's like in certain areas and then in other areas they're like, we don't give a fuck about Krampus. We have a different little companion that follows Santa around, you know?
And guess what? He's racist.
Yeah. Oh, Black Pete or whatever.
Black Pete. Yeah. Oh God. Ooh,
yeah. It's okay. He's ashy. He's sooty Pete now or something like that. They changed him. So anyway, like we said, traditionally Krampus is described like Belschnickel with that very long kind of snake-like tongue falling out his mouth.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of a man with a lot of goat features. He has the horns. He often will have one human foot and one goat foot, or sometimes he'll have both human feet or both goat feet. I even saw some, like, you know, because there are a lot of traditional, like, Krampus holiday cards. That's where the Gruß vom Krampus comes from. Is like, that's what it says on a lot of the little Christmas or Krampus greeting cards.
Yes.
So there are a bunch of little, like, 18th and 19th century depictions of Krampus with, like, different kinds of feet.
Fair.
But yeah, and he's usually really dark colored, like, covered in black fur or something like that.
Now, the one human foot, one hoof, that makes me think of something related to witches. Is that a witch thing? Or like a Satan thing?
A Satan thing.
It's a Satan thing.
We'll circle back.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
All right,
Keep that in your mind.
I'll hold my thought. Yeah.
Because there are 2 different, like, from what I saw, there are like some different ideas about the origins of Krampus.
Sure. Oh yeah, it's probably a million different things.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of arguments by different historians about him having like pagan roots, which makes sense because a lot of these sort of,
let's get real. Yeah.
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 You know. Yeah.
They all do.
He's often associated or like confused with Perchton, which is this like, there's this Germanic goddess named Perchta, and she has this little posse of like elves or fairy or whatever that are called the Perchton, and they're like,
as a goddess would.
Yeah, and they're like split into 2 groups where they're the beautiful ones who like they're literally just called like beautiful Perchton, except for in German.
Yeah.
And they like bring luck and wealth, and then there are the ugly Perchton. And they definitely have like these animalistic features, but their like purpose is to drive out evil spirits. So like people will wear Perchton masks to like drive out evil spirits, to scare them away, which is like a pretty common thing in a lot of different cultures, to have some sort of like scary mask or like to do something scary specifically to drive away evil spirits.
I mean, isn't that what Halloween is?
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is some thought that maybe Krampus and Perchton, like there's some sort of like he is one of those kind of things, you know, because they're all kind of these animalistic, scary things.
Right.
But I don't like some of their little masks that, you know, people wear still at little Perchton festivals do have like a resemblance to Krampus. And like some of those festivals are held in midwinter. But like in terms of their purposes, they seem very different. You know, Krampus is not there to drive away evil spirits.
No.
He
is the evil spirit.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also of note, that little angel toy that you mentioned.
Yes.
That attacks in the according to IMDb, her name is Perchta the Cherub.
Oh.
So once again, did their research.
Yeah. A cherub, eh?
Yeah. I also saw another article talking about how Krampus was Or actually, I saw a few articles. See, I went to like history.com
Sure.
and like, different encyclopedias and like National Geographic, things like that.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of this comes from, including a lot of them saying that maybe Krampus was the son of the Norse goddess Hela.
Okay.
But as far as I know, I've never heard of her having kids. And like I couldn't find sources for that. And I was trying to find anything about that and like literally nothing. So I'm like, where are they all just repeating each other? Or are they all just like, well, history.com says this.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure where it's coming from. And they also like bring up the Greek god Pan.
Yeah.
Again, for like physical similarities, but I'm like, Pan is a very different creature. And like, okay, maybe.
Yeah, that's not his vibe.
And also, we're talking about very different areas, like with the Norse gods and the Greco-Roman shit. And then we're over here in Germany and like the Alps.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
And luckily I'll link this other article by one Spencer McDaniel who agrees with me.
Okay.
So let's just
Spencer's the one.
Who had the same thought you did, that the vibe of Krampus is Satan-y.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Satan stuff going on. And basically
he can open portals to the underworld.
He literally takes people to hell.
Yeah.
Like literally. And also like he also had the same problem I did where he's like, okay, first off, a lot of these articles don't have sources. And they're
Don't
also
love that.
And they're also like making kind of obvious mistakes. Like they did, some of them refer to the goddess as Hel. I'm like, that's not her.
It's Hela.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not her name. Her name
I
isn't
learned
Hel.
that in a Thor movie.
Yeah,
I learned
exactly.
that in Thor
I'm
Ragnarok.
like, what is this? Yeah.
Come on.
And then his basic point is just sort of like, Krampus does not come from a pagan tradition.
Okay.
Like, he's not some sort of like horned god witch thing. He's just very similar to all of the medieval depictions of Satan, of like the actual devil. Like he's very obviously, like if you look at medieval drawings of the devil or like medieval representations of Satan in like all those little plays that they would do.
And the fur and the hooves.
Yeah. There's even a lot of medieval art where Satan has that long swirly tongue.
Ew.
Yeah.
Which like I can't help but wonder if there's is there a sexual part to that?
Probably. Well, I think goats also just kind of have long tongues.
Okay. So it's just like again with the goat.
But then it like over
resemblance.
and just sort of like in general the bestial.
But bestial and like also.
But also that gets tied in with like lechery because goats are always like lecherous.
Serpentine.
Yeah. I heard it described as like serpentine and also dragon-like.
Yeah.
And then there's like the dragon Satan association in like, isn't that in whatever that one part of the Bible is?
I mean,
or is it in all of them?
I mean,
I was specifically thinking of the
Revelations.
Revelations,
yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
that Leviathan shit and all those creatures and stuff, And like, I just think that makes so much more sense to me. And what you were saying about the one hooved leg, not both, but just one hooved leg, I always knew that as like I think I knew it as like an Eastern Christian understanding of the devil, but maybe that's not true. Maybe it's more generally Christian since you heard it as being associated with witches. That feels more Western Christian.
I'm thinking like
that like
Satan, but then like as it relates to witchcraft.
Yeah, it's like the idea that like when Satan appears to you as a man, he'll always have this one little mark that will let you know he's not that. He'll still have this one hoof, this left hoof that you can find. Yeah. And sometimes he even has this kind of like distinctive way of walking, like a distinctive gait that kind of limps a little bit because he has a hoof. Hoof and a human foot. Yeah. So like that's like a thing that is very satanic. Which is interesting then that he has that, and it makes him very like, it makes Krampus very distinct from other like Pan or Faunus, as we discussed in El Libertino del Fauno.
Yep.
Where it's like those things, like, they have human aspects, but normally they're either more human or they're more goat. Yeah. They don't have this sort of like half and half thing in the way that like the devil does. And like maybe there's what McDaniel kind of comes to is that like maybe there's a relationship in the sense that the devil in a lot of ways was inspired by pagan shit, Yeah. But then Krampus himself is inspired by the devil. So you can kind of say that Krampus has pagan roots, but only by way of the devil. Yeah. Is what McDaniel's arguing.
Indirectly.
And I think that's an interesting argument. I think it's also possible that you could say that like as a little bit of both.
Yeah.
That it was an amalgamation of things.
Yeah. It always is.
Yeah. I don't know. He also brought up this point of because another point about Krampus is that he is often depicted covered in chains.
Yeah.
Or like he'll have, or like with manacles or something like that. Or like St. Nicholas will be pulling him by a leash, essentially, but like by chains.
Yeah.
And sometimes those chains have little jingle bells on them, so that's cute.
That's cute. Yeah.
But like Saint Nicholas himself,
like a little collar so you can tell when he's coming.
Yeah. Saint Nicholas himself has, or had, has still, I guess. But when he was living, his reputation was like as a exorciser of demons. And like binding them to his will, you know, to be his servants and stuff like that. And so it's possible that the chains over Krampus are to be like, here is Saint Nicholas who has like bound this devil, perhaps even the devil, to his service, because the church will always win over Satan.
Yeah.
You know, just like the Archangel Michael did. There's lots of stories in the Middle Ages, especially of Michael chaining up Satan and sending him back to hell whenever he comes to Earth to cause
Every
problems.
time,
Like there are a
yeah.
bunch of little morality plays about that.
I'm sure.
And so anyway, so the origin is contentious,
Yeah.
I guess you could say. And I think that's because, well, I mean, it's because we just don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I just also had problems when I was reading these things about his pagan roots where I was like, but that doesn't actually make sense. But also
Yeah.
I'm not an expert. And these are like more knowledgeable sources than I am. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's really just this one other guy who agrees with me. So I don't know. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah,
I
right.
guess. I think it is probably just, you know, we'll never know. And also it's a little bit of everything.
It tends to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So, anyway, in terms of, I did mention a little bit of like the purpose or goal of Krampus, like his, what's the word I want? His function.
Sure. Yeah.
His function being
Yeah.
very different than a lot of these pagan things, but I don't think I ever actually said what his function is.
What is his function?
You know, and this movie is kind of similar to what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is just that like in a lot of these sort of like Germanic and that kind of area, there's a lot of quote unquote darker or shadow or servant figures that are like sort of going around with Saint Nicholas.
Okay.
You know, they're just sort of paired together across a lot of Christmas traditions.
Okay.
Mostly because I think it's seen as sort of inappropriate for this like revered saint to be doling out punishments.
Right.
Like especially really harsh ones, like taking people to hell.
Yeah.
It's like one thing if he's taking a devil to hell,
Like,
but
he
like
does-
a child.
A child. Yeah. He does have a naughty list and a nice list.
Yeah.
So he is keeping track of people's like behavior.
Yeah.
And so like it seems like Santa is in charge of the positive reinforcement.
Exactly.
And Krampus and other minions
Or
are in charge of the negative reinforcement.
yeah,
Or like
it's
actually
very that
doling out the punishments.
because it's
Yeah.
like we couldn't have Saint Nick's soiling his good name, you know.
Yeah.
Though even our version of Santa, who is in charge of both of it, like the worst punishment he ever does is leave you coal instead
Coal?
of presents.
Yeah.
It's like okay, sure,
Like honestly, coal has a use.
yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, so Krampus is just like another version of Santa's helper, or I guess technically Saint Nicholas, because they aren't exactly the same thing.
No,
Saint Nicholas and
yeah.
Santa, like Santa is derived from Saint, but anyway, Santa doesn't really exist until Coca-Cola, you know,
yeah.
all of that shit. But yeah, Krampus is known like a lot of these helpers. He's known for like listening at the chimney
Yes.
to see who's being naughty or nice.
Yep.
and like
who's obeying their parents.
yeah, and then
Yep.
that way he can deliver the punishments.
Yep.
And yeah, in line with all those other companions, like Black Pete.
Yep.
One of his main punishment is about putting naughty children in like a sack
In a
or
bag,
basket
yep.
over his back.
And then just do
in,
they
like,
beat
a
that
reverse
bag with a
Santa.
stick?
Well, yeah, it depends. Sometimes he will take them away to hell.
Okay.
That is part of the mythology. Sometimes he'll like take them to an icy lake.
Yeah.
And just throw them in there.
Be
Either
like-
to drown them or just not. I don't know.
I don't know.
Or he might eat them.
Oh yeah, got to. Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes he'll just beat them with a birch switch.
Okay.
And
Isn't that also a Belschnickel thing?
yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot of things. Yeah.
A lot of things.
I think, birch was maybe, it's just a good wood for beating people with.
Oh, good to know.
is
All
my
right.
understanding. It's
Okay.
like what parents maybe would have used.
For their switches, yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, we are talking about a long history of adults beating their children.
Yeah. And there's also actually, I saw a specific story from like this specific area of Austria, Styria,
Okay.
where Krampus will give families a root, which is a bundle of birch
Okay.
dowels, I guess. And you're supposed to put it up all year round as like a constant reminder of like Krampus is watching. Krampus will be here eventually.
Just because it's June.
Yeah, which felt very similar to like the little ornament bell that Krampus leaves in this movie. It's just
Yeah.
sort of like, here's a reminder that Krampus exists.
Yeah.
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
So it's like
You had one chance.
You know?
You might not get another.
It's a reminder that's also a threat. You know?
Ain't that the truth?
And like I said, in this movie where it seems like Krampus is mostly interested in the children, he does fuck with the parents, but like...
He does, yeah.
He does seem to like particularly want the children.
Yeah.
A Krampus of mythology is especially interested in children. And like I said, because a lot of these Christmas festivals in like the Middle Ages and all that were sort of focused on keeping the children's spirits up and making sure the children didn't die. But he does sometimes like beat up adults too, or he'll like whip them. He has whips.
Oh, sure.
In the 20th century, he starts to be lecherous, which is just more, I don't know, Randy Satan stuff, but also just sort of like, I don't know, just sort of that era, you know? As time progresses, he's like, there's lots of cards of him flirting with women. I'm like, Krampus, get out of here. But
You
also,
dog.
apparently, if you're a human, at least in modern mythology, if you're a human and Krampus comes up to you, or if you're experiencing one of these Krampus runs and somebody in a Krampus suit is trying to beat you with a stick, you can just give him some schnapps and he goes away.
Oh,
Krampus,
that's nice.
Yeah, Krampus just wants schnapps.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Like, he doesn't actually care about the punishment. He's like, just give me my juice.
Schnapps.
I know.
Is that Austrian? I don't know.
I don't know why it's schnapps. I don't know. I did not look further into it. I just thought it was cute.
That's funny. It's funny. Yeah.
And they're also definitely, maybe not traditionally, but in the modern versions, though sometimes traditionally too, because there's a lot of different versions of what Krampus's punishment is, and that it also gets confused with like all these other companions that Santa has in all these different areas.
Yeah.
Often it is just sort of like he'll beat the children, or he'll take them to his lair and then beat the children, and then the children will have another year to try again.
Yeah.
So there is kind of like, so going back to what you were wondering about with Krampus being, is he a merciful figure or not?
Right.
I don't think he's as sinister as this movie wants. I mean, yes, there are some stories where he's sending people to hell and he is possibly Satan, but also he's a Satan who has been bound by Saint Nicholas.
Oh, okay.
You know, so there's like a limit to what he can do. And it seems like, yeah, he really is meant to be more of like a reminder or a punishment for past bad deeds, but like with the knowledge that a punishment doesn't work if you don't have time to like then try to do better next time. I mean, not that punishments work in general, but you know, that sort of idea. So I don't know. I don't hate the idea of him being merciful in this movie. I think that still I think that still is consistent with at least some of the Krampus mythology.
Okay. All right.
Inconsistent with others.
Yeah.
But you know, that is kind of how it goes with mythology. There's a lot of different stories because it's a wide area that he exists over.
Absolutely. Well, and yeah, so maybe like, you know, maybe that family isn't in some sort of like Christmas purgatory.
Yeah. Maybe he is just watching them.
Yeah.
You know, listening in at their
They
chimney.
do get to have a nice Christmas while with like a brief moment of uncertainty and
and
maybe a
sort
little
of
bit of fear.
And they have their own little birch branch sort of reminder.
Yeah.
That like, if you fuck up again, it's fucking over.
Go get ya.
Krampus is coming back. He returns. So I don't know. It's interesting. I also wanted to, okay, this is an aside, but a lot of the sources talked about Krampus as St. Nicholas's other half, or talked about St. Nicholas having a cadre of bad boys following him. And I was just like,
posse?
yeah. And I'm just like, I was just sort of left being like, wow, I'm so glad that St. Nick and Krampus found each other. What a lovely, beautiful love story between them being each other's other half.
I know. What? Okay, whatever.
That's just how I felt. It was just a weird way to talk about them.
I understand.
Oh, also though, one last mythology note.
Oh, please.
The dark elves in this movie, the like little minions of Krampus in this film, they aren't just shadows of Santa's little helpers, right? Which is definitely what they are, but also where their names are listed on IMDb, they have the same names as the Yule lads or the Yuletide lads of Icelandic mythology.
Okay.
And also, like, the main one who talks a little bit is named, like, Ruprecht. And, like, Knecht Ruprecht is, like, just another Germanic companion to St. Nicholas.
Okay.
He's a pretty straightforward servant. He has, like, his little robed thing and his little birch switch or, like, a bag of ashes. And he would just sort of, like, smack children. And then he'd leave some coal. You know? And he was, like, you know, not that bad of one.
Yeah.
He was kind of a chiller one. Right. But the Yule lads are a little more interesting. They're a little more on Krampus's sides of things. Okay. In terms of being naughty, doing some permanent harm. Specifically, they're the children of an Icelandic troll named Grilla.
Oh, yeah. That will happen.
Yeah. Who her favorite thing to do is like cook and eat mischievous children. She loves a bad child soup.
Oh.
That's like her shit.
Yeah.
And so like she has her sons who are just sort of like pranksters, and like leading up to a Christmas, they'll each have their own night where they appear. The like 13 days of Christmas, nights of Christmas, the different one will appear. And I would not have made this connection myself. But it was pointed out on IMDb itself in the little trivia section that the gingerbread cookie that is lowered down the chimney is attached to a hook.
Yes.
And there is a Yuletide lad who they're all sort of like pranksters who like to steal food and like harass livestock. And there was one named Ketrokur, which means meat hook.
Okay.
And like he literally uses a meat hook to like a hook to grab meat like off the fireplace and things like that.
Okay.
So like this is very that. And also like since they all have their own night that they specifically appear, he visits on December 23rd, which is the same night in the movie that Howie gets adopted by the the hook. So it's like they did their research, and I always appreciate that in a movie.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of movies don't go that hard. They're like, we just want creepy Santa.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we're gonna throw in fucking Icelandic
It's gonna be
shit.
accurate. Yeah.
And like, I don't know. So I appreciated that.
That
It
is
made me
fun.
kind of appreciate the movie more, which I initially was kind of mad about. So that's my literary corner.
love
That's
that.
all you need to know about Krampus.
That's everything I've ever wanted to know about Krampus.
Yeah. Krampus is a cutie.
Yeah, and this is the thing. There actually are a ton of Krampus movies.
Oh, are there?
Like movies that feature Krampus or a Krampus-like character. I don't know how good most of them are.
Or a lot of them more like B movies.
Very.
Yeah, because this one at least had like a theatrical release and things, you know?
Yeah, they're definitely a lot of like straight to Redbox kind of stuff. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I have never watched any of them because just simply like the cover art, it was just like, this doesn't look good.
Budget.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So yeah, or just kind of like trying to focus on like the violence. And it's just like, you could have anyone or anything enact violence. Why Krampus,
Yeah, at least this movie makes a point of making it all like Christmas things.
Yeah.
That are being violent.
Which I love.
Like that.
Which to me adds a layer of comedy.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, especially when the funniest part to me is when Howard is being attacked by those 3 Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
That somehow get a hold of a nail gun, whatever.
Yeah, that's clearly played for laughs.
So
it's very
freaking
camp.
hilarious.
It's very,
So we did in Ready or Not, or I mentioned just super quickly, like the comedic beats in that film.
Yeah, because it's a great, funny movie.
It is funny, yeah. And so, so we have talked about horror comedy a little bit.
We've definitely watched some other horror comedies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Evil Dead.
Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just kind of wanted to take this, holiday edition of Horror Comedy Corner, right? Because horror comedy is still something I'm pretty interested in. I probably mentioned this in the Ready or Not episode about how, like, I think there are a lot of like it's not uncommon in a horror movie for there to be some like funny moments, something that's played for comedy,
something to kind of break the tension.
Yeah, and so I was thinking what makes, where's that line that makes a horror a comedy horror or vice versa,
versus just a horror that has some funny moments
with a funny moment or two
to break the tension so that then they can build you up into being scared again.
Yeah. And so, I read a couple of articles and I watched this YouTube video from this a site, a resource, I don't know, the
channel,
the YouTube channel is called No Film School, which I'm pretty sure I've used before.
Yeah. And this is because you're saying that this film is it listed as a horror comedy? Like, is that its genre?
Yeah.
It is listed as a horror comedy?
Yeah.
And it definitely does.
A lot of people do see it that way. Yeah.
I guess just because of the toys attacking, and that part is funny and stuff. But,
well,
I guess I just didn't think it was a rip-roaring laugh. But
no. But, well, yeah. And that's, like, the interesting thing is that, so we it's learning about, the idea of a genre.
Right, yeah.
Right? And how
We're
that,
always sort of
yeah.
trying to pick apart what exactly makes a movie even just a part of the horror genre.
Exactly.
Versus another genre. Like, is this scary enough? Is that the only parameter we use? Like,
right.
What are the tropes that make horror horror?
Yeah. Yeah, so like, and we think about the tropes and like the things we look for that are kind of the hallmarks of any given genre, right? And how those, you know, the lines aren't super rigid. Genres can mix. Like we have action comedies, you know,
rom-com, classic.
rom-coms, like Western comedies, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, comedy in particular is very mixable.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, like what I was kind of learning from that channel, No Film School, was like talking about how both horror and comedy are genres that, particularly of the different kinds of genres of films that we could talk about it's horror and comedy that elicit the most visceral reactions.
Yeah, like audible reactions.
Yes, from
like physical reactions.
From an audience, yeah. And it's also worth noting that in film, setting up a laugh and setting up a scare function very similarly.
That makes sense to me.
Like the setup and the payoff, the setup and the punchline, or the suspense and the scare.
Right, yeah.
They work
makes a lot of
really
sense.
similarly.
Yeah. I'm also thinking of like the whole idea of catharsis and that being like
and catharsis,
the
yes.
root of
Yep.
like, you know, this whole idea of the Greek theater and how it worked, and that is like, you know, the tragedies were the big things that elicited emotions.
Yeah.
And then the mirror to that was the comedies,
Yep.
which were like another sort of big emotion, but in a different way. And I don't know that there were a bunch of horrors, you know, until more recently that they weren't classifying it that way, but they were classifying it as tragedies.
A tragedy or a drama.
Also had like the physical responses of like tears and like wailing, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that those are like the big responses that you get.
Yeah,
And that maybe horror is the more modern, because we still also have tragedies too, but
yeah.
it's not really a popular genre, I guess.
No,
other
there-
than maybe like a romantic tragedy, like The Notebook or something.
Or I'm thinking of like a lot of those movies like Train Spotting or like Requiem for a Dream that are just about drugs.
Yeah.
And like they're so sad.
It's just like,
you know?
it's just like dark. Yeah.
But
Heavy.
I'm thinking about like you and I went to go see a comedy show literally yesterday. And I don't know about you, but I had a fantastic time and I laughed a ton.
Yeah.
And
to
like,
that point where it's like, oh, this hurts a little.
it hurts a little, but also it's like you get like that flood of like serotonin and dopamine, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you just feel so
it's a
much
full
better.
body experience.
Yeah, and the way that we do that in horror too, the way that like we can use a horror, like a scary film, to like in a safe environment relive some anxieties, or experience a trauma, and then have it,
and it's like
alleviated.
Pretty recognized that screaming is like a really good release for people.
Heck yeah.
Like that's like a recognized like therapy, you know? It's just like screaming at the top of your lungs, even if you're not afraid.
Yeah.
So having this like excuse to just scream in this like socially acceptable way, I can see that being really beneficial.
Yeah. So, you know, but I was like, okay, but like, again, where's that line? When does a horror become a horror comedy, you know? And so again, from this channel, No Film School, I basically picked up on like two specific main ways that like you incorporate comedy into horror. One is using like a comedic actor or like a comedic character in it, like, and putting them into a horror setting, an otherwise straightforward horror story. So I mean, this goes like a fantastic example is like Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
You know, but also like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, or like Abbott and Costello are two established comedic actors, but like they're just in a horror movie. Yeah. But it's them, right? And as again, like with basically the fact that David Koechner's even in this movie at all. Right. Yeah. And I think Adam Scott is a very good comedic actor.
Yeah. I feel like that's what he was originally more known for.
Yeah.
Was being a comedic actor. I think he's proven his more serious chops.
But there is,
recently, but
I feel like in everything I see him in, like there is sort of like a comedy aspect to it.
I also feel like he's particularly good in comedy at playing the more straight man role.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
Who is funny in his own way, but like in a more subdued way.
Yeah.
Than like...
He's there to like function for the setup for somebody else's punchline.
So it makes sense that he's the Tom to like somebody else's Howard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Toni Collette's just been around for she's done like everything.
Oh, she's done everything.
Yeah.
She can be very funny.
Yeah. So...
And she has some funny lines in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, they all do, I think. Yeah. So using like the comedic actor, the comedic, you know, character in an otherwise kind of scary
just to sort
situation.
of cue the audience that like you can laugh while being scared. Or like... Also, I feel like maybe that's a way to sort of further be able to imagine yourself into one of these situations rather than a sort of like, we sort of have talked about how a lot of horror films have kind of like flat characters sometimes.
Yeah.
Which maybe is a way for us to be able to see ourselves in it better, but also just sort of like doesn't work for me personally. But like in a more like our main character in Ready or Not, the type of funny that she is feels more relatable.
Yeah,
that makes it easier for me to be like,
it's a little drier. It's a little more ironic.
And I feel like, especially, I don't know, maybe especially our generation, but that might not be true. But the idea of like, we use humor to cope.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I think our generation is particularly, other people do that too.
I don't,
like our
if I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Our generation is like particularly known for that.
Yeah,
I feel like, so like, it kind of makes sense that this would be a popular genre for us specifically. Cause it's like, Ready or Not feels very millennial in that sense.
It does, yeah.
And with a humor, her type of humor, the humor of Ready or Not is based in her being kind of funny and responding to these situations while keeping her sense of humor, because otherwise she'll fucking lose it.
Yeah.
Which is very different than like Bodies, where like the characters themselves aren't trying to be funny or like say funny things to keep themselves going.
Yeah.
But are funny because we're kind of laughing at them rather than with them.
In the situation. Yeah. So that leads me beautifully into this, like the second main way that horror crosses the line into comedy.
Yeah.
And that's metatextually.
Yeah.
Right. So like maybe that means like using the classic horror tropes, but then like, you know, spinning it with irony or satire. Right. Yeah. Or just like exaggeration and just going way over the top, like such gratuitous violence that it becomes ridiculous and makes you laugh. Right.
Yeah. We have often watched horror movies where something gruesome was happening and I've heard you just crack up.
And I'm just like, what even is this? What are you doing? Right. And so the main example, which was a fantastic example used in the YouTube video I watched, is Evil Dead 2.
Right.
Because it is so similar to the original Evil Dead, right? And then there is that scene where somebody's in that cellar, right?
Yeah.
And like all of this blood, more
it's just so
than
fucking ridiculous.
Any one human body could possibly contain. And like it's ridiculous. Yeah. And it's kind of funny, you know?
But like in the world, it's not funny, it's terrifying.
Yes.
And so there's like a different way of hitting the humor.
Or just other metatextual things like Cabin in the Woods.
Oh yeah.
Right, you know, like
specifically playing with the horror tropes in a way that like makes you laugh.
Yeah.
And you're like, horror is like that.
And like and Scream does that a little bit too.
Yeah, same way. That metatextual, like, isn't it funny how this serial killer always does this thing?
Like, is that funny?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, oh, you got to double tap. You know, he's got to rise up again. Get ready, you know.
There's rules, yeah. Yeah, and well, the interesting thing about like the horror and the comedy is like while they are so similar, they do require pretty significantly different tones.
Yeah,
and like
so it can be hard to balance.
The ability to shift tone and like transition is difficult.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Not everyone pulls it off. Like I'm not sure if I thought that this film pulled it off.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because not necessarily just because of the comedy horror, but because in general I thought it was just kind of mediocre. You know?
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't go hard enough
in either direction.
In any direction.
It was just very neutral.
Yeah, it's almost like in certain ways like not Christmassy enough almost. Yeah.
It could have been, if they had gone gorier, bloodier, and went more horror, that would have been great.
Or went funnier.
And made it even more like campy, over the top Christmassy.
Yeah.
You know, went really focused on the little gingerbreads and things like that.
Yeah.
Then like, it would have been a very different movie.
Yeah.
And it would have maybe been more impactful.
So it's no small feat to be like to change that tone. It's very difficult to pull off, which is why, again, Evil Dead 2 and a lot of other Sam Raimi films, like Sam Raimi is really good at like playing with tone and like switching from something really scary and like related to horror to something like hilarious.
Yeah.
And like played for comedy.
But I also think he's somebody who's known as being more of like a cult classic or like a something that people who like genre like rather than something that's very like popular. Not like popular, but like the populace, like pop music.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think he's playing for a popular audience, I guess.
Yeah.
Which makes it interesting.
But he did also direct Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, he did, and he did it great.
Yeah.
And he played the line between comedy and action, comedy and superhero.
Yeah.
So beautifully.
Yeah, like there's action.
No, I'm not saying he's not good at it.
Yeah.
I just think he's an interesting example as somebody who's like, an interesting example of somebody, like those Evil Dead films are very much more in the like horror realm.
Very. Yep.
I guess.
Yep.
That people who aren't fans of horror will not think to watch Evil Dead. Whereas some other movies like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies,
Yeah.
people who aren't fans of horrors might hear about Bodies, Bodies, Body and be like, oh yeah, I'd watch that. That
Still
sounds kind
want
of
to
funny.
check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, no?
Yeah. I'm thinking about like watching, whenever I watch a movie with our friend Jules, like we often find ourselves laughing.
Yeah.
And then it's funny, like if I go see a movie with Jules and Lauren and I, or Jules and I will be cracking up and Lauren will be like, oh no.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
a very different line depending on what the audience is
Yep.
and like what their expectations are.
Yep.
Because it's hard to like subvert tropes when your audience doesn't know what the tropes are.
Yeah.
Like you don't know that like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, you might think, well, this is just how horror is and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
You're like more bought into like how the characters are reacting or something instead of like the meta part of it.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of like the funny things in this movie. So basically everything Howard says or does.
Yeah, it's definitely played for laughs.
Yes. Yeah. Like his truck Lucinda.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. A lot of their squabbling that they have with each other, just like in general, is sort of played for laughs.
Yeah. I think when the cousins come in and they're a little grumpy,
Yeah.
and Linda's like they're upset the Steelers lost.
Oh,
like
yeah?
that's funny. Yeah. But then there is some like horror stuff, like when Beth is out in that storm
yeah.
for no good reason.
I loved that.
And she's hiding under that car and like that creepy Jack in the Box. Like that's scary.
Even, like the build up to it with just like the sounds of the chains, the
Yes.
little jingle bells,
Yep,
even
yep,
before
yep.
it. So we're already kind of amped up, and then
Yep.
she's hiding. Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's just a Jack in the Box, and it's like, what's going to happen? And then we don't even see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Also in that climactic scene, again, well, and also like sound can be incredibly helpful in conveying either horror or comedy, like that super creepy choral Christmas music as like Krampus is taking down Max's family, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty creepy. And then
Krampus.
and kind of like the somewhere in between is like when the family is kind of being attacked by Krampus's companions.
Yeah.
And again, when Howard is attacked by those Christmas cookies,
Yeah.
like I think that's a really good example of where this movie like really straddles the line.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think it's most successful in those
and
spots.
successful in pulling off the change in tone for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. But there's like so many horror comedies that we could watch and talk more about it. Like,
Yeah.
honestly.
Like I think Ready or Not does a better job of being a horror comedy and like balancing
Oh yeah,
those
that movie's hilarious.
and being kind of like over the top, but still kind of like a horror. Like
it
you're still
literally
scared for
ends
her.
on a joke.
Yeah.
In-laws. But we're not here to talk about Ready or Not.
No.
We already did. Check
We
it
already
out.
did.
It was a good one. Are you ready to play a game? Anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Let's talk about it.
Let's play a game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
My thought
yes.
was because I loved in this movie how they referred to Krampus as Santa Claus's dark shadow.
Yep.
Which is not particularly true to Krampus. He's more of like Saint Nicholas's little companion servant guy.
Yeah.
/ boyfriend, maybe, in my headcanon.
Okay, I think
I'm going to make like little traditional
that's
Christmas
you, but
cards
okay.
that are like, you know, that are like the family's Christmas cards that you send out to be like, this is how our family's doing. But
Yes.
it's going to be like, greetings from Krampus and Saint Nick.
okay.
That's what I'm going to do for this.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
I thought it would be fun for us, for our game, to try to come up with some dark shadows for other holidays.
Other
and
holiday mascots.
Yeah, other holiday. And my first hope was that you would give me a dark shadow for Hanukkah.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I don't feel like I have the ability to do that.
No. Yeah. Well, that's a toughie, right? So the idea is that there's like this group of Jews, the Maccabees,
Yeah.
right? And they're trying to protect their temple because there's a king. What was his name again? We just looked it up.
Oh, Antiochus.
Antiochus, yeah, who's a Syrian king, but definitely under a very strong Greek influence.
Yeah, like a Greco-Roman.
So like the bad guys in that story are the Greeks, right? But what's interesting about the Hanukkah story that I've been thinking about just within this last year is that it in its own way is also sort of this attempt to assimilate paganism at like the fact that like the miracle of the light, you know, is a miracle from God. It's not the earth, you know.
It's not just that, like, the cycles that are
like,
often celebrated with winter solstice festivals.
No, it's the big guy. It's
the big guy who's going to bring the sun back.
Yeah, that's why. It's not because of the earth or, the changing of the seasons or anything that has to do with anything that exists on earth.
Yeah.
So kind of an interesting way of, like, using that idea of light, and like that would be so important, especially to like pagans in Europe, you know, to be like, no, the light is from God.
Yeah, the light that will get us through the darkness is the light of God in our heart, and also on this oil lamp
of one God.
One singular God.
I cannot stress enough how much there is only one God. Anyway, so yeah, just interesting because I mean, we know that like that's why Christmas is the way that it is, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Jesus would have been born in the springtime, but it was moved to the winter time to fuck up Saturnalia
because we needed a winter festival.
Yeah, and the solstice, you know. So Hanukkah is actually a little bit more similar to that than I thought, because Hanukkah is not like Christmas. They are not.
I know. The only reason I brought it up first is because people always lump them in together because they happen at similar times.
Because it's the Jewish holiday that happens around the same
Christmas,
time.
so people always bring it up. But it's not even like the biggest.
It's
Jewish
not
holiday.
that important of a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if it is more important here in like our very Americanized culture, like in America, just because Christmas is such a big deal that people have had to make Hanukkah more of a big deal than maybe it would have otherwise been.
Right.
There's like Hanukkah merch.
It's a pretty
that I don't think other Jewish holidays have.
Yeah, no, you're not going to get like a Passover sweater.
Yeah.
Which I think we need to amend. I think Hanukkah is also like, you know, a fun thing to celebrate like in Israel.
Oh, yeah.
Like in Israel, they don't have latkes, they have jelly donuts. So like they have their own little way of celebrating Hanukkah. Yeah. But there's no like distinct bad guy.
Well, and then
there's also no distinct good guy.
That's what I was going to say. There's no Santa. I mean, there's what?
Yeah.
Because it's Judah and the Maccabees.
Yeah.
But he's not really like like you don't really.
It's just like the Maccabees
Who's the
together.
person? Is he the person that you're supposed to? Wait, is that even for Hanukkah?
No.
That's not even for Hanukkah.
No.
The person that you leave the drink for.
That's Passover, and that's Elijah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. It's all right. It's okay. Yep. So, but when you were like, let's come up with shadow versions of other holiday mascots, I immediately thought of an Easter bunny.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And I thought about, we asked sound guy Matt.
Yeah.
Like, what would the shadow Easter bunny be? And he was like, that
Donnie Darko
bunny. But like, would the shadow Easter bunny be a bunny?
Right, because
my
thought
be some other kind of animal.
Was that it would be the chicken whose eggs we're all eating, the hen who's laying all these eggs that the bunny's hiding for some reason.
That bunny took for
And so maybe the hen's coming back to get all his eggs back or something if you don't collect them all or keep Jesus in your heart or something.
I don't really know. I could see like not a rabbit but a hare. Like something bigger.
Right, yeah.
You know.
What did sound guy Matt say? A jackalope?
A jackalope, yeah, gotta have
Which is great.
Gotta have horns.
You gotta have the horns.
Got to every time. Antlers, horns, something like that.
The idea of a hen with horns.
Creepy.
Delightful.
Don't like that.
Love
it. I could also see it being like a predator, like a fox or a wolf.
Oh, coming to get the bunny.
And the hen with its eggs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, coming to get the eggs. A snake.
A snake, maybe.
A snake in the grass who's going to get the eggs before you do. If you don't get them quick enough.
Very Satan-y, too. A snake.
And if you're too greedy and get all the eggs, maybe he'll eat you.
Maybe. But I also see, like, again, I think maybe going back to, like, how we understand, like, Krampus to look like as, like, having fur. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's why I'm thinking of, like, a fox.
Yeah.
It's, like, have the fur, maybe, like, a little mangy, you know? Like, he's not necessarily in very good shape. Don't foxes eat eggs, too?
Probably.
Am I making that up?
Well, and they definitely have a lot of roots in like European folklore.
Foxes?
As like the sort of trickster, not bad, but villain, antagonist
and
character.
Sly.
Yeah. They're often
like in Pinocchio.
Yeah.
It's like a fox that tries to convince him he can become an actor.
Yeah. And he's like Reynard the Fox. It's like such a particular archetype, this fox like that, like he even has a name that he sometimes would be referred to by in like the Middle Ages.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So
the dark shadow of the Easter Bunny could be Reynard the Fox.
Thinking about in the specific ways that like Easter has melded with pagan ideas of
Ostara.
the beginning of spring. Yeah. And it's similar in it for Christmas, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe
but what
like
is the meaning of
fox.
Easter in the way that Santa is representing like giving and sacrifice, and therefore Krampus must be taking.
Right.
What is the meaning of Christmas? I mean, of Easter.
Well, Easter is like celebrating like one of the particularly larger miracles.
Oh, yeah, right.
Jesus coming, like, because that's the thing. I always wondered why people who were, you know, who identified as Christians didn't make a bigger deal out of Easter than they did Christmas. Because Easter seems like the way bigger deal. Like, saviors and gods are born all the time.
But he came back from the dead,
But they don't always resurrect. Like, there's a few, you know, but like the resurrection's like, that's the gig.
Yeah.
So why is that not a much more important holiday? I don't know. Well, and then of course also the fact that Christmas is coming and it's a time of rebirth and it's time for fertility. Again, with the bunny and the eggs.
Coming. Yeah.
Spring's coming, winter's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time for things to be born.
Well, I'm also thinking about with like New Year's Eve, we sort of have the figure of the little cherub,
the baby,
the new baby for the new year.
Yes.
And that he does kind of have a dark shadow of like the old man of the previous year.
Father Time.
Yeah. Like he does have a dark shadow that is sort of in the way you're talking about with Easter being about like rebirth and like fertility and stuff. Like we actually do kind of see that in New Year's with like this baby being born at the same time that this old man is dying.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Who apparently only lived for 12 months. Became an old man in 12 months.
Wow, rough life. This baby has a rough life ahead of him.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's going to happen to you too, baby. Yeah.
Who's Cupid's dark shadow, though?
Oh, God. No, I feel like you have an answer.
Oh, because of the mythology behind it?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's not really our understanding of, like, St. Valentine's Day Cupid. You know,
right? If we're thinking about Saint Valentine,
but even like Cupid as like Eros, like the Greco-Roman god, like, there's not a lot of tie into that with with Valentine's Day. I don't know why he got tied to it, other than being a god of love.
Yeah, just having to do with love. Yeah,
his dark shadow would need to be a god of like hatred and strife or just apathy or whatever.
I mean, like, what about like a god of war?
Oh, like Ares?
Yeah.
Or I guess Mars.
Whichever.
Yeah. Mars as the dark shadow of Cupid.
Of Cupid?
That's weird. That's a weird
weird. I don't know about that. But now I'm just trying to think of other holiday mascots. Like the Easter Bunny was the main one. Oh my gosh, St. Patrick, yeah.
I feel like St. Patrick was like his own dark shadow.
Yeah.
We already got a lot of dark like leprechaun shit going on. That's like already in the mythology.
And then the fact that like, you know, the story of St. Patrick driving out the snakes like might be an allegory for driving out the pagans.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh. So maybe the snakes are his dark shadow.
A lot of snakes coming up here.
Yeah, devil shit. Which is interesting because in Greco-Roman stuff, snakes were like a very different symbol. But anyway,
they represent health.
Yeah, they represent a very different thing.
Yeah. Because they can shed their skin and they're good to go.
Yeah. And for like transformation in the way that like butterflies are.
Yeah.
And sex changes, which is just cool.
Which is just a thing. Yeah. God, I'm just trying to think like Halloween mascots. I don't know.
Yeah. Halloween just is the dark shadow.
It just is. Yeah. Halloween. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the better comparison would be like Dia de los Muertos and like All Saints Day or something maybe. But
yeah.
Because they're meant to be like, but they're more companions than, well, in the way that Krampus and Saint Nick are more companions than they are antagonists.
Right.
I don't know why this movie is trying to pit these bad bitches against each other when they're clearly dating. They're each other's other halves. I've read the research.
I don't know. I don't know if like imprisoning someone in chains is the beginning of a healthy relationship.
Unless they're into that.
I doubt it. Yeah, but I don't know.
You don't know?
Gosh, what other? I'm thinking just super quick. I had a thought of 4th of July.
Oh God! So like Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is Shadow Uncle Sam, though.
Well, I mean, I guess probably it's some sort of Ruski. Some sort of Red Scare.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah. It's a bear on a unicycle.
And then it has a little hammer and sickle patch on his side.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, a hammer in one hand and a sickle
Yeah,
in
there
the
you
other,
go.
right? Yeah,
coming
you're
to
right.
antagonize
You're right.
people
Yeah.
and stop their freedoms. I mean,
love
I
it.
guess because of July 4th, it's like more origin stuff. It should be like the British or something.
Right,
but,
yeah, a red coat. Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't be.
No. It's a bear.
It's a bear. So this has been Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
We are going to take a break for the month of January.
Yeah.
I think this is probably a thing we're going to do. We did it last year.
Yeah.
I think we all agree that
It's-
January is the worst month.
It's nobody wants January.
Sorry if your birthday is in January.
I'm not sorry.
I am. I truly am. But we'll be back in February for we're going to cover They Live. Going back to the 80s. Love this for us.
Thank you as always to Sound Guy Matt.
Always and forever.
For also helping us brainstorm today, plus all of our sound stuff.
As always.
Check us out on YouTube. All of our episodes are there, including this one.
Follow us on Instagram.
I'm sure I'll post something about Krampus and St. Nick's being in love.
Yeah, have a happy Yule.
Have a happy Yule.
Yeah.
And may your days be brighter from here on out.
Yes, comfort and joy, as they say. And until next time, Gruß von Krampus.